this video, let's look at the floral parts in detail. It's a continuation of the former video which is dealing with the flower morphology, and of course we started sepals. So sepals, as far as a flower is concerned, is the outermost wall. That means it's the outermost floral organ, and usually it's green colored. It's at the outermost part of the thalamus. That is the part on which on which the other floral organs are arranged. So sepals are usually green in color. Now let's look at what are the important features of sepals. Of course, it's the outermost of the floral whorls, which means that outermost of the floral organs. What is its importance? Its role or its basic function is to protect the other floral parts when the flower is a bud. So the bud stage, it protects other floral parts. That's its basic important role. And of course it's usually green. There are cases in which it's colored other than green, and such colored sepals are called petaloid. That means something like looking like a petal, something like that. So colored sepals are called petaloid sepals, and sepals can also be divided on the basis of its components. So in the sense that if the sepals are fused, we call them Gamosepalous, and if they are free, that means if the sepal parts are staying free, which means they are not fused, such sepals are called Polysepalous. So that's about sepals, which is the outermost wall of the floral parts. Now, there's a very important case where there could be a development outside of the sepal, and it's what is called Epicalyx or the Hypocalyx. So it's basically a kind of development which is outwards of the sepal, and it's an extra series of green sepal-like floral organs. So the important point here to note is that it develops outside of the sepal. In fact, it covers the sepal, something like that. So it's an extra series of green sepal-like floral organs, and it lies outside of the calyx. Now, this Epicalyx or Hypocalyx, an important thing to note is that it's commonly seen in the families Rosaceae and Malvaceae, and we have very famous examples in both the cases. Rosaceae, we have the strawberry, and Malvaceae, of course, the famous common shoe flower. So these two examples and the related families are very important as far as NEET exam is concerned. Now let's go on to that floral part which we usually humans are most interested in. That is the petals or a corolla, which is the colored part, which is what we usually denote as a flower when we refer to this part of the plant body. So petals or corolla, it's the inner accessory floral organ. So what do you mean by inner accessory? It basically means accessory means that, of course, petals are not doesn't have a direct role in reproductive process, which means that it aids in reproductive process. So that's why it's called an accessory floral organ. And of course, petals are usually very brightly colored, and the reason for that is quite well known. That is, it's to attract pollinating animals, and especially insects. So petals are usually very brightly colored and comes in a huge range of colors. So, but there are very rare cases in which petals could be greenish. In such cases, we call the petals sepaloid. So that's very important, sepaloid, that word, not the word sepaloid. So, and going on further, petals can also be divided into two based on how the components are assisting. That is, Polypetalous or Chloripetalous, which basically means that we are dealing with free petals, or the component petals are staying free, which means that they are not joined together. So that is Polypetalous or Chloripetalous. And of course, the other case is Sympetalous or Gamosepalous, which basically means that the component petals are joined or fused. That is they stay merged together. It's look as if the petal components look together as a single unit, something like that. So we are Sympetalous or Gamosepalous. We are dealing with joined or fused petals. Next, we go on to a very important classification, which is extremely important as far as this thing is concerned. As far as the floral organs are concerned, that is Aestivation. Aestivation is the arrangement of accessory floral organs, that is the sepals or petals, in relation to one another in a floral bed. So that is a very important thing. So it's very important in the sense that usually asked in the NEET examination, and usually asked in various examination, biology examinations, where flower morphology comes as an important part. So let's look at aestivation, and the first kind is what is called open aestivation, and you can see that the accessory floral organs, that's the sepals and petals, are remaining free. They are not touching each other, and their margins are free. So the diagram represents the upper view, and we can easily see that the margins of the petals are staying apart from each other. They are not touching each other, and they are not covering each other. That is what is called open aestivation. Going on to the second, valvate aestivation, and here interestingly, the adjacent petals touches each other. Most of the adjacent petals touches each other, but note the important point that even though they are most of them are touching each other, there is no overlapping. So that's the important part. The petals don't overlap, even though they most of them could be touching each other. So that's the important feature about valvate aestivation. Going on to the next, which is called the twisted or contorted aestivation. Interestingly, in this third case of aestivation, we have the petals continuously overlapping. That's one petal overlaps the other. It goes on like that. All the petals are arranged in such a manner that they overlap each other. So this basically continuous overlapping of the petals, and that is the most important feature as far as twisted or contorted aestivation is concerned. Going on to the fourth type, which is called imbricate aestivation, and as far as imbricate aestivation is concerned, it's a very important case where we have subdivisions, and imbricate basically means that irregular overlapping. That is there's no definite pattern of overlapping. That's the key point. And the first one is, we call it quincuncial or imbricate aestivation, where two petals which are internally overlap, two petals externally overlap, and the fifth petal, the one margin of the fifth petal is internal, and the other one is external. So note that point. As well as this first case is concerned, note the importance of how the fifth petal is getting overlapped. The imbricate, the second case is ascending, which basically means that the posterior petals are overlapped by two lateral petals, and they themselves are getting overlapped by two anterior petals. So it's a kind of a continuous overlapping with a definite pattern, but on the whole it's irregular. Now going on to the third case of imbricate aestivation is quite important because it's a definite there's a definite feature, and we call it a vexillary or descending imbricate aestivation. What is the feature of this thing? Basically, the posterior petal overlaps two lateral petals, and they themselves are overlapped by two anterior petals. So that's the interesting point. And from the overhead diagram, we can easily see that it's as if the petals are in a step-by-step manner covering each other. So that's the important feature of vexillary imbricate aestivation. And not another important point as far as NEET exam is concerned. This aestivation is a characteristic feature of the P family, and there it's called the papillonaceous corolla. So the papillonaceous corolla is a characteristic feature of the P family. That's a very important point to note. Now we are going to a very special and interesting case where there's no distinction between the sepals and petals, and we call such a development, such a growth, perianth. So if there's no differentiation, if there's no distinction between sepals and petals, such a condition, such a growth, such a feature of a flower is called a perianth. And the units of perianth are called tepals. So now the word of tepals is very important. And tepals can be divided on the basis of two criteria. The first base is based on its color. So if the tepals are colored green, we call it sepaloid. So not the point greenish tepals are called sepaloid. And if they are colored other than green, we call such tepals petaloid. So non-greenish tepals are called petaloid. And the second criteria is on the base of something similar to what we discussed earlier, on the base of the existence of the unit. So if the tepals are freely existing, we call them polyphyllous, and if they are fused, which means that the individual tepals are remaining joined together, we call them Gamosepalous. So free tepals polyphyllous and fused tepals Gamosepalous. Now let's take a look at certain examples. So in the second part of the video, let's take a look at particular examples of the floral characters which we just discussed. So basically we are starting with an example of the valvate aestivation, a standard example of the valvate aestivation where we know that the adjacent petals touch each other but they don't overlap, and a very famous example is brassica. Going on to twisted or contorted aestivation, which basically means that it's continuous overlapping, and a standard example in that category is China rose. Next, going on to ascending imbricate, one of the most important types of aestivation which we discussed. Example is cassia, and of course, as the considering the example which we discussed about perianth, Aestivation is a particularly important case which has tepals. Now, coming on to the most important part of this video, that is things which can cause confusion, things which are which may something like rhyme or sound the same, something like that, which may cause confusion when we learn about it. So They're looking at the difference between sepaloids and petaloids. What exactly what are the key differences between these two floral developments? So sepaloid is basically means it's a sepal-like floral part, and petals, of course, basically indicates a petaloid. Basically indicates a petal-like floral part. So understand that a floral part which looks like a petal, that's the meaning of petaloid. Naturally, sepaloid is usually greenish in color, and petaloid is colored other than green. Usually that's the case, and as far as a sepaloid is concerned, it's usually a petal. That's the interesting part. The third point is the most interesting part. Petaloid is usually a sepal. So note those points. And this video series will be continuing. We'll be looking at the other floral parts in the next video. And thanks for watching.